Welcome to meeting number 19 for fiscal year 23 of the Advisory Finance Committee. Today is February 16th, 2023. Pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote access in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the meeting location listed on the posted agenda on the AFC and the town website. And it is possible that any or all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the link posted on the aforementioned agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely, as previously mentioned. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Westborough TV, Verizon Channel 28, or Charter Channel 192, and concurrently recorded and as soon as possible after the meeting posted on Westborough TV YouTube site. That being said, let me welcome our guest this evening, Zach Brugner, who's the Director of Economic Development, and we are going to be discussing the proposed article by the Economic Development Committee, which is currently Article number 8 on version 6 of the developing warrant. It is the Small Business Grant Program. So, Zach, do you have a presentation, or would you just like to speak to the article extemporaneously? You have to unmute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can't believe we're this far into Zoom and I still haven't figured that out. But we are. I do have a brief presentation, which I'm trying to share.
Okay.
Right now. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members of the Advisory Finance Committee for inviting me tonight to talk about what is currently Article 8 on the warrant for annual town meeting, which pertains to the Small Business Grant Program. Why we're here today is that this article would transfer from free cash $60,000 to provide funding for small business grants, which are currently issued by the Economic Development Committee's Business Assistance Grant Program. Previously, our Business Assistance Grant Program has been funded through a revolving account where billboard fees collected by the town have been deposited. When we, and as you may recall, I had presented to this board in September for an article in October that would have expanded the Economic Development Committee's grant program from $40,000 to $60,000. When that article was approved by the voters at town meeting, facts came out that the way that the funding mechanism for the grant program was allocated wasn't sufficient. And so we are introducing this article to fund the grant program again, basically. The town still receives $60,000 per year through agreements with billboard operators, although those fees are no longer collected and put into the Economic Development Small Business Grant revolving account. So that account doesn't exist. And this article would transfer from free cash $60,000 to fund grant making through the Economic Development Committee's Business Assistance Grant Program. Support for this article would allow the EDC to continue its grant program, which has been very impactful and is also what triggers eligibility for the town's participation in the Massachusetts Vacant Storefronts Program, which is a tax credit program for eligible properties in town that we've actually used twice in the last year or so. The vehicle for grant making from the EDC is its Business Assistance Grant Program. I presented to this board about this in September, so I'll be a little bit brief, but the purpose of the EDC's grant program is to provide financial assistance to businesses undertaking growth or expansion projects and to stimulate investment in vacant and underutilized commercial properties in the town of Westborough. Grants are up to $5,000 or $10,000 if the applicant intends to use the grant for matching tax credits through the Mass Vacant Storefront program. The EDC reviews grant applications quarterly, and most applications are funded through reimbursement, although the town could pay vendors directly if requested by the applicant. Approved uses of grant funds are generally funds associated with fit up of a new space or the purchase of equipment. Excuse me, that was my cats. Or the purchase of merchandising, other equipment that could help expand the business. The EDC continues to iterate and improve on this grant program over time based on feedback from both applicants, awardees, and board members and other community members. So, the grant program is still relatively young in its history. It was founded in June of 2019. The town has voted to expand the grant program twice since it was originally created. And more recently, the EDC has made some changes to the program overview and to the application to make it more clear and to provide more guidelines around reapplications and other gray areas that previously existed in the application. Furthermore, the EDC recently created a rubric to aid the board in its grant making as the process has gotten more competitive, and we've significantly increased marketing for the grant program. And as I think this slide speaks to, we receive a tremendous amount of interest in the grant program, which has resulted in a very high number of applications and relatively lower average awards to each applicant. So in calendar year 22, the EDC received 28 applications to the grant program. It made 22 awards, and this amounted in about $150,000 in funds requested and $45,000 in awards for calendar year 22. Several other communities in the region have grant programs that are aimed at business attraction or business growth and expansion, including the town of Ashland, the city of Worcester, and the Marlborough Economic Development Corporation. I think it's worth noting that these are communities that we compete with for small businesses or for entrepreneurs that are seeking, to find a space. And so, having a grant program really puts us on a similar competitive edge to these communities. Additionally, a lot of local businesses have benefited from this grant program recently, and I put this slide up here to demonstrate the breadth of the types of businesses that this program has helped. We have new businesses here like the Coop, Cha-Cha and Beans, long-standing businesses like Art and Frame Emporium and Nurse Farm. We have businesses across all different types of industries, from food service to medical services to even a business that sells tractors, to education. And so it really has, I think, broad impact on the types of businesses that it has helped. And then additionally, and most importantly, the EDC grant program really helps us promote our local economic development goals by helping businesses open, helping businesses grow, and improving the town's reputation, i.e., really showing people that the town is open for business and supports business friendliness. So on this slide, and I'm not sure how large it's appearing on your screen, but I've shared some quotes and sort of testimonials from recent awardees of the grant program. So some of the things that I'll highlight here, I guess verbally, are that the grant was really helpful to us as a small business getting started in Westborough. That was from Cha-Cha and Beans, which is a new business that's opened downtown recently. I think to speak to some of the types of projects that it funds, for Nurse Farm, they had mentioned that the grant from the EDC helped them purchase a tent that doubled their seating capacity and provided shelter for patrons, enabling them to increase business and host public events for residents. And so, I think that speaks to how the grant program has helped businesses expand in ways that also create new experiences and opportunities for the community, which is really important. Another business, Ferris Flowers, which is a longtime business downtown, they were able to purchase an additional floral cooler, which has helped them, grow and expand their business by, increasing the number of flowers that they can keep on the shelf in that storefront. Her business stated that the program, is needed to help small businesses to grow and expand and to keep Westborough thriving. And so, several other businesses have shared really, I think, meaningful quotes that speak to the impact of the program, which is why I would encourage this board to support it. I'll pause if there are any questions or comments. I welcome them and would hope to have an answer for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, questions? Rod?
So, Zach, thanks for your presentation. Having been on the board when some of these policies were put in place, I sincerely appreciate the work it's doing. The one question I would have is the time frame that businesses have to be able to use the grants, and have all the 2022 grants been used, or when will they be used?
Typically, when we write the grant agreement with the awardee, we put a 1-year deadline on expending funds. So far, we've only had one business fail to meet that deadline, to my knowledge. Actually, there was one business that failed to meet that deadline before my tenure, but then shortly after my tenure, the board voted to extend the deadline, and so they were able to use the funds. But I believe for the numbers that I showed up this today, only one grant applicant did not use the funds.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Andrew has a question.
Andrew? Where?
Thank you.
Oh.
So, I don't know, I know you presented several times before us, and what was really driven home this time when you presented is how difficult it would be to make a direct correlation for economic benefit for every time one of these awards is done. When you're changing your storefront or adding a tent, that isn't necessarily easy to say, hey, that would mean, more business. But from the point of view where this program still adds benefit to the customer, the narrative is interesting. I would still love to know if there's ways we could track. For example, how many of these businesses are still in the town after 3 or 5 years? How many of them have expanded the number of people they've hired? Because you have an amazing control group as well. When you have companies that are not receiving these grants when they've asked for them. So if you follow up with their questions the same way, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years after, it'd be interesting to note if this grant is making a meaningful effort in keeping businesses in this town over a long period of time, because it's so hard to try and track these grants back specifically to dollar figures. So a thought, an observation, and a note. Thank you.
Thank you. I completely agree, and I completely welcome the brainstorming, and I think that's incredibly helpful to me and to the Economic Development Committee. We actually have it on our agenda for our next meeting in March to take a look back at the grant program and consider any kind of tweaks or changes, kind of broadly speaking, that we might want to make, as we look forward. And so, I will certainly share your feedback with the board. And, if there's, any additional thoughts you have, I would be more than happy to have a meeting or you can send me an email and, we can track that and start having conversations about ways in which, we can try and, track the impact of these grants over a longer term.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Melanie?
I think we've asked before, but maybe I'm just not remembering. How many small businesses are within the Westborough area?
I do believe you've asked for. I unfortunately don't have that answer available to me right now at this time or off the top of my head. If I had to estimate, I would assume it would be somewhere within the number of 400 to 600. As a frame of reference, the EDC did a project recently where we created an online business directory, which is accessible on www.shopwestboroughma.com. We had a lot of interest in that, and so we had retail, sales, and service businesses create listings for themselves in the directory. We have just under 200 businesses listed in the directory, and I would assume that, you know, we're probably missing at least 50% of the, you know, small businesses in Westborough with that number. So that's my basis for that estimate.
Okay, so if we went on the low end of that, 400, there was only 28 applications during a pandemic when people were struggling?
Well, so, and what I will qualify my response with is that the grant, and I can flip back, I think, to this slide, and I actually don't think that it says the point that I'm trying to make, which is unfortunate, but the grant only funds a certain type of eligible expenses. It does not fund operational expenses or working capital, so things like payroll or, you know, the replacement of, you know, regular equipment or rent, unless you are a new business. It's really aimed at trying to attract new businesses to town or help, you know, the businesses that are in town undertake a project that is going to help them grow by serving new customers or, you know, attracting new customers, or offering new products or services to folks. And so I think as a result of how the program is designed, it's not well suited to address, I think, some of the needs that businesses might have been seeking during COVID. Also, you know, I'd like to point out that the numbers that I brought up are for calendar year 2022, which is certainly still, you know, part of the COVID-19 pandemic, but you know, I think at the height of the pandemic, when a lot of demand for those types of funds would have been at its highest, we weren't doing enough to market or promote the grant program like we are doing today. And so we had, I think there was less awareness and fewer applications as a result. During the peak of the pandemic, from I believe January of 2020 to March of 2021, my position was vacant, and so the Economic Development Committee did not have staff support to run or you know, market the grant program. And I think, you know, that's why there might not have been as many businesses in COVID and that were seeking the grant program as relief from it.
And of the 6 that were declined, do you know, they didn't meet the criteria, or you ran out of money, or what happened?
I don't know off the top of my head which 6 were declined. Typically, you know, the board, you know, and recently we implemented a rubric, so the board has tended to fund applications that score higher on the rubric and not fund applications that score less on the rubric. But yeah, I can't really speak to these particular 6 applicants.
Thank you.
Walter?
Thanks, Zach. So there were 22 awards at $45,000. That's just a touch over $2,000 a piece. Was that enough for people to accomplish their goals? Because, I mean, they were looking for 3 times that. So if they got, say, $1,000, because I assume some people got more, some people got less, and they were looking for 3 or 4, did that, you know, did they go ahead with the plan anyway?
Yeah, I think there was a pretty big range. So I think in this time frame, the smallest award was for $1,000, and the largest award was for $7,500. And that ended up being a matching, an award that was used for a match with a vacant storefront tax credit. You know, as I had stated in response to Rod's question, it's pretty rare that folks don't end up using this money. So most of them do find ways to move forward with the money, even if it is less than what they were asking. for a few examples, there was one business that was going to purchase a piece of equipment, and instead of purchasing it right away, they waited, actually, I think like 6 to 8 months until they ended up, purchasing the equipment with the grant money and, reaching back out to me to say, now we're ready to do this. There's another project that I'm aware of where they kind of value engineered the project down a little bit to work with the grant money that they had and what other money they have available. So, those are really just anecdotal, but, what I've found is that most people are able to make something work. And, I think also with a lot of grant programs, folks, folks ask for a lot sometimes, more than what, you can provide, and, more than, what they might even need, sometimes.
And just the other question on the explanation is, so that revolving account for the billboards no longer exists or whatever, the money goes into the general fund now? Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct. And I'll also note that any money that was in that account prior to it being cleared out, which I believe was just around $60,000, has gone into the general fund.
Tom, question?
Andrew does.
Andrew?
Thank you. Do we have a method in place whereby we verify that the money is being used for what we would consider acceptable uses, or
Yes,
what we're trying to get used for? Okay.
we request, typically, as I'd stated, we only typically we fund these grants through reimbursements. So most of our applicants, and when I say most, and this is kind of just this isn't a number based in fact, it's an anecdotal number, but like 95 to 99% of our applicants do it as a reimbursement grant, and they provide us with receipts for what they've purchased. The receipts have to match what is described in a grant agreement, which both the applicant and the municipality execute with each other. And so, we won't pay that grant out until we've seen a receipt and also proof of payment, either in the form of a canceled check or, a bank statement that verifies that they bought something that matches that description. In the cases where we pay a vendor directly, we only pay that when we're provided an invoice that matches the description of what is outlined in the grant agreement.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, I've got a couple of questions, Zach. The purpose of the program is to grow and expand business in Westborough. And I'm building on Andrew's initial comments. There doesn't seem to be any mechanism in place yet to measure success. We could see proper use of the money based on what you established as criteria. We see a tent, or we see a flower cooler. But there's no way we know if that money is actually helping these businesses to expand their business, expand their top line, in effect. It seems to me there's no, other than to look at an invoice, they're not achieving the objective of what you've outlined. They're not achieving the program objective. Or there's no way to measure that. And how do we know that taxpayer money is being used appropriately then?
So what I will say to that is that I think one of the most impactful pieces of the grant program, and where the town gets the most ROI, is through this improving our reputation section. And what this grant program does is that it helps reverse a long-standing reputation that in some circles the town has had, in my opinion unfairly so, that we are a business-unfriendly community. By offering grants and working with our landlords and real estate agents to find businesses that need them, what we do is we show businesses that we are taking actual steps and putting our money where our mouth is to improve our business unfriendly reputation. And what I can say is that this program does help us attract specifically small businesses to our community. And again, I think where we need to work on and what the EDC will focus on in its next meeting is some of the more, I guess, quantifiable ways to track that. But at this time, what I can say is that, there are several anecdotes that I can share, some of which I've tried to outline on this page with quotations that demonstrate the value of the grant program. For example, just a couple of weeks ago, I got an email from a woman who is an entrepreneur in a food service business who has been looking at various towns to consider for her first brick and mortar location. And she reached out to me because, according to her email, she'd heard that we have a grant program that helps small businesses open in their community. And she was interested in that, and so she wanted to learn more and see if there were any viable spaces or opportunities for her in Westborough. But it was the grant that piqued her interest and encouraged her to consider Westborough as a location for her new brick and mortar location. And that's a really long range, intangible form of impact. But, it's through conversations like these where I know that it makes a difference. For example, on this slide where Sheer Transformation says that, the grant program, one of the pieces where it brings value and brings ROI is by, letting businesses know that the town cares about small business. Simply Soho, for example, also said that, more importantly, the experience really made us feel the spirit of the town of Westborough in support of our success. And by spreading that spirit and making businesses who talk to other businesses and, talk to folks through chambers or, through BNI groups, or, talk to their neighbors and other tenants in their building, it spreads that spirit that Westborough is open for business, and that helps us bring in business, which is that ROI for the town. I think more practically speaking, it does help these businesses grow their business and expand in ways that are, yes, I think difficult to quantify, with numbers and also on short time horizons. But, I think the Nurse Farm example, I'm not sure if they would have done that project without grant funds. They actually, I believe, applied twice to seek, the grant. When we first awarded a grant, they didn't get what they wanted. And, at the time we allowed reapplicants. And so, they reapplied to get some more funds. And I don't think without that, they would have been able to provide these additional seating capacity that, by doubling their seating capacity, I think has had an impact on their business and also has had an impact on the community. And so, I think it's these examples that, myself and my board need to take some time to think about how to try and quantify. But the value, I think, indeed is there.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I'm acutely aware of the intangible aspects of building a brand and building the Westborough brand in particular. But I think you would get much more bang for your investment dollars. We would get much more bang for our investment dollars in attracting new businesses by being able to show that through this grant program, among other things, top lines actually grew for these businesses. And that is a more tangible expression of the value of this program. So I personally strongly encourage you and the committee to find a way to demonstrate tangibly the benefits of this program in terms of helping the small businesses. The other question I had is more of a request. Can you give us what the tie-in is between the Mass Bay tax credit program and this grant program that we have? How does that work?
Yeah. No, I'm happy to. The Massachusetts Vacant Storefronts Program is a tax credit program run by the Economic Assistance Coordinating Council, or EACC, for the state. Westborough, I believe, created, in order to participate in the program, a town needs to create a vacant storefront district, and they also need to have a local incentive program, basically a grant program, that applicants can use as a match for the tax credits. So Westborough created our district in I believe, December of 2019, or sorry, December of 2020. The EDC increased the maximum grant award to $10,000 in order to match the maximum tax credit for the Mass Vacant Storefronts program. But the EDC's grant program is an eligibility requirement, really, for the Massachusetts Vacant Storefronts program, because otherwise the town does not have a local incentive that applicants could match with the Mass Vacant Storefronts program. Did that make sense?
To me, it does. Anybody have any? Okay, yes. Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Zach, thank you. Did we lose you?
I stopped sharing and disappeared at the
Okay,
same time.
well, we do have a question from an in-person attendee, Mr. Fred Savoy. Fred? I don't know. We're going to find
Maybe
out.
I'll dial back in.
Yeah.
Mike, Wilfred Savoy, 41
lost
Chestnut
everybody.
Street.
Yeah, Fred, can you hang on one second?
Yeah.
Until we see if we
lost,
get him.
Andrew too.
No, that's Andrew.
That's,
Andrew's in the
Oh,
penthouse.
Andrew's
Andrew
the
has the
fancy
beautiful-
living penthouse?
Yeah,
he's in the
sunset too.
Nice
Yeah.
view, Andrew.
Living La Vida Loca.
the power
Could
of...
use a little more furniture.
It looks like,
And
it
more.
almost looks like
Ask for a
Seattle.
grant, Andrew.
Yeah.
Let's see if Zach calls in. I think what happens is he probably exited to stop sharing, but he like literally
Exited.
exited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Double X.
Oops.
This one isn't really even for Zach, I guess more for the fellow committee members here. This seems like it'll be a recurring expense year after year.
Looks like it.
So having it funded from free cash, does that meet best practices?
We fund
Free
a
cash.
lot of things.
Yeah.
Cash that are recurring, it's more, but it's hard to tell, because there's some things we do, other recurring articles that we,
But is it gonna be coming up every year?
Oh, he's back.
but
He's back.
technically the argument is it's funded by the billboards.
Right. Well, that's where I'm going. It's not funded anymore.
Zach, are you with us? Okay.
Apologies, my
No.
My Wi-Fi looks like cut out for a
That's
moment
okay.
there.
We have a question from one of our in-person attendees,
The audience.
Certainly.
the audience.
Wilfred Savoy, 41 Chestnut Street. Does the Economic Development Group have anything to do with tax agreements, obviously with the larger companies? That is, local tax agreements
Tips.
to bring them in. Do you
Tips.
have involvement in that?
So if you're referring to tax increment financing, like TIF agreements, is that?
Let's say,
um,
what I'm saying is to attract major companies into the town, there are sometimes agreements made between the town and the company to abate taxes for a period of time. Are you involved in that? Is your group involved in that?
In my tenure with the town of Westborough, I have never been involved in a tax increment financing agreement or any kind of local tax incentive for a business to come to our community, other than those offered through the state by the Massachusetts Vacant Storefront Program. In my knowledge, in the past, the Economic Development Committee has been involved in those conversations. However, I believe that all tax increment financing agreements are negotiated by the town manager's office and need to be approved by voters at town meeting. So I believe when Olympus received a tax agreement for the development on West Park Drive, the town had to have a special town meeting to approve that agreement, which had been, negotiated by the town manager's office with support and facilitation by the Economic Development Committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Anybody else? Okay. Zach, thank you very, very much for your time this evening and your explanation and walking us through the program and the connection with the vacant storefront program and so forth. We appreciate your being here and wish you good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate, all the thoughtful questions and feedback. I do sincerely want to express that we, are going to take that into consideration and try to find a way to, quantify some of those top line impacts of the program.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Night.
Thanks, Zach.
Any discussion on this right now, or do you want to hold off until we go through all the articles in March?
It's up to you.
Anybody? Just my own opinion, I mean, they've been doing this, I don't know, what, 3-4 years?
It'd be nice to have some data.
It would be nice, success, if you can show success, top-line success, you could actually attract more grant money, probably, from the town. I know I would welcome the ability to grow the businesses with more money. So I just wish they would spend some time collecting data that's meaningful.
Well, I agree with you, and I think many of us made that point. I'm not sure how much data you could have on a 3-year-old program right now. I mean,
You could
When
have
you're
data on
impacting 20
individual
businesses.
businesses. They're not impacting that many businesses.
Right.
yeah, but so the grants that were made in 2022, you'd have no data on the impact yet.
No.
And just to be
You know,
clear, it's a volunteer committee with one person in the office working, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
no, and I absolutely think you're right. They should be moving toward that,
You
but I
gotta
wouldn't,
come up with
for a
a
3-year-old
strategy.
program, I wouldn't expect to see much data yet anyway. And the people that they made the grants to 2 years ago, you see
COVID got in the
1
thing.
year of data. I mean, you want to
Well,
see top line revenue
certainly,
increase. I mean,
Yeah.
It could break
But
it
I mean,
down
that's-
pretty
they'd have 1
easily,
year.
'cause someone like the Coop went from 0 to having a business,
right.
right? I mean,
Would they have come without
so,
the grant?
because he said that a chunk of them are, so you could just start by sorting, these 20, there's 22 grants, these 11 were new businesses completely, and 8 of those 11 are still around, or something like that. And
Yep.
like someone suggested, looking at the other, 5 new businesses that open, what were their percent that are still around? I think it could be creative in some of that and come up with some data. If it is a focus, maybe we'll do that.
I think to
You
Mike's.
were on the committee,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
you should know a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, I give you my opinion,
Oh,
but
that's
I,
right, you were on the committee.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I think
Yeah, like-
Zach has grown the program tremendously, and I think it's finally taking hold. I do question, and I think this is the biggest issue, how much impact can a $2,000 grant have? So I think to Melanie's
big enough.
point is they've been trying now more recently. It was like before, anybody who made good sense, they just divided evenly. And then they realized that some people could be impacted or helped more than others, and they've developed a rubric to do that. So, but I think trying to measure the impact of an average $2,000 grant is tough. So I think a lot of it really is, I think it opens people's eyes, as Zach said, when they're thinking about coming to Westborough, there's actually somebody they can talk to who can help them, guide them through. So I think that's, it's a side benefit to the town that's not always measurable to the businesses.
So maybe, to your point,
Needs
and
to be bigger.
Melanie's point, grants should be bigger
Yeah,
to be impactful.
Yeah.
Fewer, bigger
And
ones.
increase the
versus-
competition.
$2,000.
Well,
No, but I
Okay.
know, I'm just saying.
Whatever.
Portion of it, yeah.
but if you really want to make an impact, increase the size of the grant. And, you can set up criteria to be able to measure not just the outcome of that, but to make sure that there's accountability in the process, even if you stay close with the business owner.
I think that'd be great feedback for Zach. Say, hey, get us some data, and then once you have that, ask for some more money, and then see if we can have some more tangible, yeah. Like Gene says,
I
it's
do
tough
have to
have
say,
it.
I do wonder how much we can ask of a small business who are already not going to be your most business savvy people in the world. Ask them for what we would consider valid, viable, authenticatable top line numbers that will require them to, math things out in a way that they may not be able to do, in a very straight and easy way. When we ask them to put, when they're putting up a new canopy or putting up a new flower thing, how much do they really attribute to that business, and how much can we use that as a barometer for success? Which is why I think that we can turn to things like businesses that we help will stay in town longer and grow their headcount longer, potentially, than those who are rejected from the thing.
Agreed, but,
the program.
if instead of saying you can put your money, and I'm just gonna grab one, into a new tent, you can say, put your money into a marketing strategy, even a small marketing strategy, and let's see what that does to driving the top line. I mean, you can measure that. I know you can,
Anybody would know you would.
right?
Small
So-
businesses, though.
What's that?
Like, I've worked with large companies that don't know how to measure things properly. Even decent marketing. I understand where you're going, and I love more concrete numbers. I really would. But what I heard from him today and the type of grants that are being made today, it's really hard, I think, to make a direct line connection to top line numbers in a way that we could trust that are really meaningful.
Well,
I think.
We probably have a fundamental disagreement, Andrew, on the capabilities of small business owners.
Don't sell me short.
But, no, I'm actually in support.
That's what I'm saying.
But in effect, then we're just giving away taxpayer money. I mean, you could call it $60,000. It's a small piece of a extremely larger town budget. But effectively, that's what we're doing, is we're just choosing those to whom we give these gifts. And, that's that.
Look, there is some, and maybe they have to focus more on that, but the matching ones, where you're enabling somebody to get a bigger thing.
Yes.
My experience with the company I work for is the whole point of getting the TIF from the town they got it from was not the money they got from the town. It enabled a state grant, and you had to get a local TIF to get the state. So the local TIF was a small number, the state number was large. So leveraging those grants seems like a really good application of this, and maybe that has to be very high in the rubric, right?
I was just
It
gonna
is.
say,
It
have
is.
that
Yeah,
hit the
I would
rubric.
say it
That
is.
Maybe it is. So.
I think that's great, yeah.
Gonna say, maybe when we all leave the committee at some point, we go volunteer for the EDC. Right.
You can't be both, I found out.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we're gonna move on to the approval of the minutes of February 13th. May I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
Melanie?
Um,
No,
Oh,
Discussion?
Discussion.
Oh,
Is
Discussion.
there any discussion?
Yeah,
yes.
there's the section in the minutes about the
Public,
public
Forum.
forum,
And we didn't
of which
actually
we
have
did not
one.
have one.
so that,
Nor was
Oh.
it in the minutes, nor was it.
It
in
was on the agenda, but not
It
on,
was not on the
the
agenda,
agenda.
nor
No.
did we have one
No.
in person, but it is in the minutes.
so,
So
Okay.
I think it should probably be removed.
Corrected.
Corrected in the
Yeah.
minutes.
so you okay with your motion being as amended?
As amended, yeah.
as amended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
That's
All
what I
right,
was
any other
listening.
comments? Okay, Melanie?
Board, yes.
Andrew?
Bradley, yes. Sorry.
Dolan abstain.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes?
Moretti, yes.
601.
601, yeah? 610, whatever. Okay. Do we have any liaison reports this evening? Okay. Nothing has changed on the future draft agendas, they remain as I indicated at Monday's meeting.
No public forum tonight?
No public forum tonight.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Minutes.
It's all
Let's
cut
not-
and
At least
paste.
I said nobody said anything.
What are we talking about Monday?
There is no meeting on Monday. It's a
It's a
holiday.
holiday.
Thursday.
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 Don't be switching the days around now.
I'm ready to meet Monday.
Thursday,
I'll be
we
here by
have
myself.
the,
Do that.
Thursday, we have the animal control officer, and we have Shelby Marshall coming in to represent the CPA committee and the Hockomock Pond Committee to
There we
speak to
go.
their articles.
So just to be clear, she's representing the article to form
Form,
the
yes.
CPA committee because
Yes.
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, yes. Thank you.
Whereas the
Okay.
other one, actually, there is a
There is a
Hockomock Reuse
Hockomock Pond
Committee.
Reuse Committee.
The citizen petition on abandoning the latest, are they gonna have any more data or any more wording behind that?
I have no idea yet.
That's pretty wild.
We'll see. I'm sure the town manager will flesh that out somehow.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second?
Any discussion?
Carried it.
Okay, Melanie?
Board, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Dolan, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes?
Moretti, yes. Thank you, Westborough TV.
7:46.
Mr. Savoy, thank you
Ooh, I
for
never put my
attending
thing
this
up.
evening.